Joining me today is Todd Frankfort. Todd is a divorce lawyer, a marital property expert, a girl dad. He is a professor. He's an Adidas collector, a vinyl collector, an excellent home chef, and just an all-around great person and a really good friend of mine. And I'm so excited for you guys to meet him. Your father was a legend in the legal and accounting circles, and now you have become somewhat of a legend in the legal circles. Did you ever feel like you were living in his shadow? And if so, how did you step out of his shadow?
No, I don't think I was living in his shadow. He was a lawyer, but more importantly, he was a CPA. And after 2 weeks in accounting 2 at University of Texas, I knew for sure that I was not destined to walk that path. And so I went to law school, and I was saying it during, when I was in law school, I told him that I wanted to be a litigator. And he told me, you can't do that. And he suggested maybe wills and estates would be more suited to my personality. And those who know me know that a surefire way to make sure I'm absolutely doing something is to tell me that I can't. And so he told me I can't be a litigator. That was a huge shove in that direction. And so he liked hearing about the litigation part of my practice. He liked hearing the war stories and the courtroom shenanigans. And I think he was frustrated on some level that he wasn't the one in court doing making the objections and arguing the motions. But I never felt like I was in his shadow. It was always I enjoyed the fact that he and I worked in kind of a parallel universe where I could call him and say, hey, I've got this problem. What do you think? How would you deal with it?
But I mean, you can't deny that y'all were in parallel universes. I mean, he essentially created the concept of forensic accounting in the family law universe, and you went into marital property law, which utilizes and relies on forensic accountants heavily.
Yeah. In 8th grade, I remember we had a 2-story house, and his study was on the first floor, and my room where I did my homework was on the top floor. And I would do my homework and then come down and take a little study break and go into his study and see what he was up to. And in 8th grade, my father was explaining marital property to me. A gift to inherit, like separate property, is that what you acquire by gift, devise, or descent, or if you owned it before you got married? I remember that from 8th grade. No one else remembers that from 8th grade. No one else cares about that in 8th grade. But I did. It was interesting to me. And I heard him talk about in Houston the legends that he was working with, the Don Fullenwiders and the Bob Piros and the Earl Lillys and Lindsay Short and all these guys. And they were all
legendary
lawyers to him. And so they were legendary lawyers to me. So my dad has always been really my hero. And so I kind of took on, oh my gosh, who are these guys? And then I was fortunate enough to get to work with Don for 8 years. And I'd had cases against all these legends that I had heard about growing up. It was fun. It was interesting.
You recently made the decision after running for judge a few years ago. You decided to go back into the political foray and run for justice of the Court of Appeals.
Yes.
What made you decide to get back into politics?
I was talking to a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine this morning, who is very left-leaning. And I'm not necessarily the most right-leaning guy, but I'm more right than she is. And so we were talking about politics and what it looks like. And it's not so much that I got back into politics because I want to be a politician. I want to be a judge. And the path to that is to, I guess, become a politician. So Unwittingly, yes. I'm back into politics.
So what drives you to political service?
It's important to give back. I think it's, Houston and Harris County has been really, really good to my family and me. My parents both grew up in Houston. My dad, we talked about my dad, but he built his practice in Houston. And we all, my brother, my sister, my mother, and I all still live in Houston, and we're all happy Houstonians. And so I think it's important to give back, and that is a way that I can, another way I should say, that I can give back to Harris County.
How, as a judge, how do you navigate the current political divisive climate? And I know you're not a judge yet, but I'm saying, like, as you're aspiring to be a judge, judges have to maintain such neutrality.
I think the way I would navigate it is to step back from it. I think, if I'm being honest, I got into it with someone about how come this one party is doing all these things and I don't appreciate that, or that they were very against it. And my response was, if as a candidate and frankly as a justice on the Court of Appeals, I can't comment about it. It's not up to me. It's not my whim. It's not what I think should be the law. It's my interpretation of what the law is. And I think that's a really important distinction. And so the divisive political landscape I think it's terrible. I wish it were not that way. Do I have the power to do anything about it? Absolutely not. Is it my job to do something about it? Absolutely not. I think the hot button issues that we talk about and that get pushed to the forefront of any political debate, I think as a judge of a trial court or court of appeals, I think your thoughts on that, on whatever that issue happens to be at that moment, mean nothing. You don't get to comment publicly on, well, I think abortion is wrong, or I think, you don't get to say that.
But isn't that the difficulty in the judicial political system, especially in Texas, where in Texas we run as political candidates on a political ticket as either Republican or Democrat. But isn't that the thing that makes judicial candidacy difficult in Texas?
Yeah.
That they are elected as either Republican or Democrat, which means you've got to sign up for one of the parties, and I guess somewhat subscribe to the platform, but then you, I guess, technically can't really state your views because you might have a case come in front of you.
Exactly. I can't state my views because I might have a case come in front of me. And like I explained, when I ran in 2022, I had a very nice lady who is very, very conservative call me up and say, Todd, we don't know anything about you. What are your stands on any number of subjects? What's your stance? And my response on almost all of them was, look, my stand, how I feel about this personally, I'll tell you how I feel about it, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. It's whatever the law in Texas is, that's what I'm going to interpret. And that's what I'm going to, I'm there to, for a trial court, make rulings based on the existing law. On the appellate court, it's to review rulings based on the existing law. And I can't change the existing law. That's for the legislature. And so navigating a political climate is not something I relish doing. I find myself in a position of having to go be a politician and go shake hands and kiss babies. And I think I'm good at it. I think I can go, and I learned when I ran in 2022 that I have to be comfortable enough with myself to walk into a room of however many people, none of whom I know, and just walk up and start talking to people. And I hate doing it. I'm terrible. I'm good at it, but I hate it. Like, really, really just don't like doing it. I am a very generally private person. I don't like, I don't know.
There's a tension in the discomfort
I like
of that.
I'd prefer to keep to myself.
Yeah. What do you think should be the solution from the judicial standpoint between this distinction of running as a Democrat or Republican and the neutrality that judges should sit on the bench with?
I think there's a short answer is I don't know. Longer answer is I think there's probably a better way to do it than we have in Texas, but this is the way that we have. I can't change the way that we have. I just have to operate within the system.
Do you think there's a difference between a Democrat elected as a judge and how they view cases versus a Republican that is elected as a judge and how they view cases?
I think it depends on the Democrat and depends on the Republican and it depends on the case. I think that there can be, but I think that, I think each side tends to vilify the other side on some level. And by running in 2022, I got to meet, lots and lots of the judges in Harris County, the sitting judges, and I have become friends with a lot of folks who I might not otherwise have become friends with. I'm sticking with my original answer of it depends on the judge and the issue.
Yeah. What part of campaigning for office has surprised you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. What has surprised me the most?
I try to ask good questions.
Yeah, you do. Good. Wow.
I mean, I've done it for a few years.
You have. What has surprised me the most? What I think, I guess it's not really surprising. I guess one thing that surprised me is no matter how much effort you put in to running a campaign, no matter how much you try, how many hands you shake, babies you kiss, people you meet, whatever, on election day, none of that matters. It's whichever way the political winds are blowing on that day. And what was really difficult for me to do, because I'm a little bit of a control freak. I want things the way I want them. It was really difficult to just let it go and say, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
It felt out of your control.
It was completely out of my control. No matter what I did, no matter how many people, it didn't matter. Because one guy running for a district court judge in Harris County, Texas, you can't spend enough money to move the needle at all. And so
because of the broader political climate.
Well, because of the broader political climate and because Houston, there are 2.5 million people. That's Harris County. So I lived, at the time, I lived in kind of the western part of Harris County, not almost to Katy, but getting towards Katy, which borders on Fort Bend County. I could drive for a solid hour to go to Crosby, which is on the complete opposite side. There are so many people in that area, and there's so many people with different political views in that corridor between where I lived and Crosby. And you can't possibly influence that many people, that you can't buy enough TV ads or things like that. It just is what it is on the day that the vote happens.
And so what you found was that that the voting base was more swayed by factors out of your control, like the broader political climate, the national politics, what?
When I ran, it was when Beto was running for governor against Greg Abbott. And inside Harris County, like in in Harris County, in the urban area where I primarily live and where our office is, that is blue. There are little bitty pockets of red sprinkled in there, but it's mostly blue. It's a lot of Democrats.
Yeah.
When you get outside of that, in Crosby or Katy, it's more red. And so, like I said, I couldn't possibly influence all the people.
And so do you feel like the average voter knew you or knew your opponent and knew the strengths or weaknesses of your particular candidacies?
No. So I had a contested primary. And so there's a big difference between a contested primary and then
within the political party.
Within the political party and then in the general election.
Right.
Within the political party, the contested primary, the people who vote in the primary, they generally do know both candidates. And they generally do. People try to get informed. The people who are active, and I suspect this is true on the Democrat side too, but the people who vote in Republican primaries, they get informed. They go to meetings, they talk to each other, and they try to figure out, who is Todd Frankfort? Who is the guy running against Todd Frankfort? What are their values? What are they doing? What are their experiences?
Right.
In a general election, I think it's less so, especially in the down ballot race.
Do you think that the average voter underestimates the importance or the potential impact that a judge or the more, what am I trying to say? The more local the race, the more impact it could have on the average voter, and the less they know about it.
It's funny. I spent a lot of time talking to people about the further down the ballot, the closer to your front door.
That's good.
Whoever you vote for governor, at the end of the day, may have a little bit of impact on you personally, but when you get divorced or when you have a car accident and file a lawsuit, or when, God forbid, some DWI or whatever, the judge who makes that decision in that case is going to impact you a whole lot more than whoever's sitting in the governance
You're
mansion.
way more likely to see a divorce court judge or a criminal court judge or your county commissioner or somebody super local, elected official than you are to ever need something from the governor of your state.
Exactly. And the other thing, in a family court race or a family court bench,
which is what you ran for before.
In family court, those judges have tremendous power.
Right.
Like you and I know because it's our arena, but for folks listening who don't know, they can take your kids away, they can take your house away, they can take your money away, they can put you in jail for not following their order. They can mess you up good if you're not on the straight and narrow.
And in your experience, do you find that people just mostly go and vote in those races based on a D or an R?
Yep.
Without knowing those people personally?
Yeah, without knowing the people personally. I found that in 22, there were, this Beto and Greg Abbott running for governor, and people voted in those races. And the undervote, which is when people they show up to the poll, they vote in a handful of races, and then don't go all the way down the ballot. If you have voted in that election but don't vote in a certain race, you are an undervote in the one race that you don't vote for. And there were, I think in my race, there were like 75,000 people who showed up to the poll and voted, but didn't vote in my race. And that 75,000 could have swung it one way or the other.
Right.
But
is it better to if you go to the poll and you really care about the governor's race and you don't know anything about the down ballot races, do you think it's better to not vote in a race that you don't know anything about? Or do you think it's better to vote based on the D or the R unintelligently?
I think it's better to educate yourself on who these people are that are running for whatever bench.
Yeah. But if you don't have the time or the inclination.
If you don't have the time or the inclination, then, I suppose it is better to not vote than it is to vote for some rando D or R.
Yeah.
I wish more people had voted R for me, but it's okay.
Of course. But I mean, that's, I think, the interesting dynamic that's happening right now in politics is that we have this huge concern in our country about who's running for president, about what's going on at the national political level. Or in Texas, right now we've got the governor's race, we've got the senator's race. Like, we've got people that are just super concerned about things that are going on in these broad spectrum races. But the reality is that the super local races, what happens at the mayor's race, what happens at the city council races, what happens in,
county commissioners races,
in the county commissioners races, what happens in the district court races, any particular person is more likely to get a divorce. Our divorce rates are, depending on how many times you've been married, somewhere between 50 and 75%. You're more likely to see a divorce court judge, a criminal court judge. You're likely to need your county commissioners, your mayors. You're more likely to need somebody on the local level than you are ever to need your senator, your state reps, or for certainly the president.
Right. I completely agree.
And it blows me away when people are so consumed by the national politics over which we have so little control, when we really ought to be so much more concerned about our local politics.
About what's happening on your front door.
On your front doorstep, or your city, your town.
The further down the ballot, the closer to your front door.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So what do you think is the smallest move you made in your political goings-on that had the biggest impact?
The smallest move I made that had the biggest impact, I mentioned to a friend that I was running for judge and that I wanted to try to meet a group of voters who I would never otherwise have an opportunity to get in front of. And that I felt like when talking to some folks, you're just another guy to them. Like, they don't know you. You've got this impressive resume, but they don't know who you are. They don't care. What can we do what can you do to make them care? And so I mentioned to my friend that I was, running for judge and thinking about that. And he said, well, I used to teach at TSU Law School, and, I've quit. I can suggest to the dean there that they hire you to take my place. Well, that'd be great. And so that one conversation, now I'm an adjunct professor at TSU. I'm going into my, fourth year doing it. I teach domestic relations. I've taught one semester of mediation, and I like teaching domestic relations more. And I've loved every second of it. And that one conversation opened a whole new, okay, Professor Todd, here we go. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that you found somebody that was a connector that connected you to another important, thing.
Unwittingly. I didn't target him and say, okay, I know this guy teaches or used to teach, and how can he help me do that? It was a guy, he actually called me when I decided to run last time. He called me and said, hey, I heard you're running. I'm happy to help. What can I do to help? I told them what I was trying to do, and now I'm a professor.
I like that. I like that. What about being a professor has impacted you the most?
Oh, impacted me. It's fulfilling. Impacted students. I get to see the light come on. You and I have had conversations in our practice together where you've suggested, hey, why don't you do, like, oh yeah, holy cow, never really thought of it that way. And I get to see that light come on for a lot of them in an area that I feel passionate about. It's really, really interesting to me. And I had one of my students tell me, they're like, Professor Frankfort, I can tell that we're talking about, it's like the difference between talking about adoptions, which are important, and, we should know about them. But my practice is not about adoptions. My practice is marital property. And we could tell the difference between your passion talking about adoptions versus talking about marital property, because you just light up and it's way more interesting to you. And so it's more interesting to us. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Going back to your father.
Going back to my father.
Going back to your father. What values or philosophies did he instill in you that still guide the way you operate?
So when I spoke at his memorial recently, I referenced a yellow sticky that he had written on and framed and put on his desk. And now I have that in my office for people to see. But it says, no ego, no bull, no whining. And that's what he taught. That's what he taught me. Like, be humble. Don't bullshit anybody. Sorry if I can't say that.
You're good.
And whining doesn't help anything. Just carry on.
I like that. No ego, no bull, no whining.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. But he had a whole bunch of sayings that he came up with. He was kind of a motivational speaker guy a lot of the time. But he had all these sayings, and I remember lots of them. And they'll come up as I think about different cases, or think about things I'm doing, or think like as I'm mentoring our young lawyers or mentoring other people, like, you should think about it this way. And that's the one that came to mind when you asked was the yellow sticky.
Yeah, I like that. You'll have to send me a picture of that. Do you think that being a divorce lawyer gives you some sort of edge in understanding human condition and human dynamics?
I think that we see people at their absolute worst. No one's ever happy to be sitting in our office. No one loves being there. Even if you're the one who wants the divorce, no one is, you're mourning the death of something, like your marriage, and no one's happy about that typically. I mean, some people are, one of the reasons I became a divorce lawyer instead of transactional or whatever is, at the end of the day, I've had clients like give me a hug and say thank you. No one ever did that closing a real estate deal. And so you do see human kind of emotion at a very, very raw level. And so seeing that has given me the ability to I think, a deeper understanding of that. And I try to be more patient. I mean, all my corporate lawyer friends are like, oh my gosh, how are you a divorce lawyer? How do you deal with all that emotion and everything else? My answer for a long time has been, I have almost infinite patience and a good sense of humor. And that gets me most of the way there. And I think that's true.
Do you think you got that from your mom or your dad?
My father. Absolutely. I just rode to and from San Antonio with my mother, and no, not patient.
When you go in the courtroom, what do you look for first? Do you look for facts? Do you look for personalities, or do you look for leverage?
I like to have leverage. Then I look at the personalities, the facts. I know the facts when I get there, so I try not to be surprised by facts. But when you walk into court, the facts are already in your head. I'm trying to think about what leverage I can gain in that moment, if there is any leverage to be gained. Sometimes there is no leverage to be gained, and I think that there's value in recognizing I have no leverage here. I need to make a deal and be done with this because I'm going to lose. And that's an important lesson that I've learned the hard way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Whenever I wrote that question, I asked myself the same question. I thought, how would I answer this question?
And how would you answer it?
Yeah, I would answer it the exact same way because by the time I walk in the courtroom, I've already analyzed the facts. Mm-hmm. The personalities I've already kind of gone through. To me, that's the least of the questions. I've already analyzed the facts. I've already analyzed the law. And by the time I'm walking in the courtroom, I'm looking for leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, the courtroom to me is already about the leverage.
What leverage can I gain between, point A and point B, and point B being, okay, we're in trial?
Yeah, we're looking at what's the outcome the judge is going to give me versus what I can better than.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the expected outcome, and what can I try to do to avoid it or to do something consistent with it?
So in all of your years doing marital property work, you've represented, clients, high net worth clients with businesses. You've seen the unraveling of big businesses, family legacies, reputations. What do you think is the biggest strategic error that high net worth clients make?
I think that a strategic error that some high net worth folks make is guys who are like the apex predator of earning. They are used to things happening the way they want it to. Things happen because they don't roll with the tide. They are the tide. And a problem that they tend to have is the law is sometimes inconsistent with their tidal whim, to stick with the tide metaphor. And so a strategic error is not talking to someone who knows what the law is so they can try to manipulate the facts or plan for the law so it runs currently with your tide instead of against your tide. And that happens all the time, because I said so. This is, don't you know that I earned all this money and so none of it is yours? That I've represented people who have said that to their son. I'm like, not quite, buddy. It's community property. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
mine because I made it.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Whenever I wrote that question, I contemplated how I would answer it. I think one of the biggest strategic errors that high net worth clients make is that they're so accustomed to dealing in the business arena that they are so transactional in the business arena that they think dealing in relationships is also transactional. And one of the reasons that their marriage is breaking down is that they are transactional at home, kind of like they are in their business. And they fail to understand that they can't be transactional at home. I think a lot of lawyers make that mistake too. Whenever I've represented lawyers, they tend to be lawyer at home too, and they don't realize that they have to turn that off at home. And so, I think that's the same answer to different question, but acting at home like you act at work, I think, is the mistake, the strategic error.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that I'd call that a strategic error. I think that's a personality flaw.
Well,
but error either way,
yeah.
The same result.
Something that could have been changed if they'd thought about it along the way a little differently, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you're in a high pressure situation, What is your methodology, or how do you go about making a high pressure decision?
I take a minute. I take a beat. I think about it. And I, pro and con in my head. It depends on the pressure and like how long do I have to make this decision. I do the best I can with analysis, and then I go for it, and I try not to look back. Hindsight's 20/20, but it's also who cares? Like this is the path you've chosen. I'm walking that path. A lot of times you can't turn around and go back the other way. And so once I've analyzed it and decided that this is what I'm going to do strategically in a case or what have you, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I like that. I tend to probably be a little more bull in a china closet. I'm not necessarily a person who stops. Whenever I'm in a high pressure situation, I quickly analyze. I don't necessarily stop to think. I just quickly analyze and go. I push go and I go, but like you, once I've done something, I don't look back. Like I don't second guess it.
Fullenwider told me a long time ago, he said, Todd, there are several wasted emotions. Guilt and regret are two of them. Guilt is a wasted emotion. Why bother? Regret, I should have. You didn't, so go. I
also think fear is a wasted emotion.
I think fear is a necessary emotion. But I think that you can be afraid and then you just, okay, I recognize I am afraid. I was on a ski slope with my brother. It was a blizzard and I couldn't see 3 feet in front of me. And I'm like, how the heck am I going to get down the rest of this mountain? And David's like, come on. I'm like, I'm afraid. He's like, I know. Let's go. And he just went.
Right.
Like, okay.
I think you can recognize that you're afraid.
You can recognize you're afraid, but you can't be paralyzed by it.
Yeah, you cannot in life be paralyzed by your fears. Like you just got to say, yeah, this is scary. I'm doing it anyway.
This is scary. It sucks. Let's go.
Yeah, because if you let yourself get paralyzed by your fears, then you're never going to do the things you're afraid of, because everything you want to accomplish in life is on the other side of your fears.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were, like I said before, in politics, I'm good at going and introducing myself to a room full of people I don't know.
Yeah.
If I laid behind the fear of, gosh, I really don't like being in this room of people I don't know, I'm not going to talk to anybody, then I would never, my political career would be shot.
Right. You sure wouldn't go for it, right? What's one piece of strategic advice you would give your younger self for your life?
I would say make fewer emotionally based decisions. And instead think about goals and where I wanted to be, and to go down.
Play the chessboard better.
Play the chessboard better. I think when I was younger, I was more a checkers guy, and now as I'm 57, I think more chess, which is okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wish I'd played chess a little better as when I was younger.
Yeah.
Would you give your daughters the same advice?
I have given my daughters the same advice. It's funny. My daughters are they're similar in a lot of ways, but they're very different in others. And my older daughter, Lucy, who Lucy is a lot like me. She and I are very similar. Claire is a lot like who I wish I was. Claire, I talk about, I'm going to make a decision. I'm not going to agonize. Claire, and that kid, she decides something. It's thought out. It's done. This is what we're doing. And here's why you should be doing it too. She's going to run all of our lives, and I'm okay with it because it'd be really organized.
Is there a meal that you have made that has gotten you through a tough season?
Ooh, yeah.
What is it?
For sure. I made a batch of duck an andouille sausage gumbo shortly after I split up from my ex-wife. And I still have one little container of it at my freezer at home because it was good. And I got the duck. I did everything that I needed to do. And it was a process for me. Like I just did it by myself one day. I chopped all the veggies. I made the roux. I did everything. And it was really good. And I enjoyed eating it. And one thing I like about cooking, we've talked about this. One thing I like about cooking is that there's an immediate result to it. You know, it might take all day, but it's after a day's labor, you get this really yummy stuff. Our cases take years. Right. So I cook. I got yummy food right now. And I loved that. And the gumbo was really good. And it was like nourishing for my body and nourishing for my head and nourishing for my soul. And I liked that.
And you get to freeze some of it and
I got to freeze some, and I still have some.
Is there an album that has gotten you through tough seasons?
Album. Yeah, music is something that's really important to me. I think that I don't know about a tough season, but there are certainly songs and records that I listen to when I am feeling a certain kind of way. If I had to pick one, I would probably say the Velvet Underground record. Their first one with the banana on the front, the Andy Warhol looking banana. That's one of the most influential records of all time. And I have a first press of it, and I listen to it on special occasions.
I like that. All right, final question. When everything is said and done, and you have a legacy that your daughters remember you by, what is the legacy that you want the world to remember you by?
I'd like to be thought of as kind and thoughtful. I think I'm a good lawyer, but I think that there are lots of good lawyers. I think I'm a good professor, but I think there are lots of good professors. I think when I win, I think I'll be a good judge, but there are lots of good judges. I would like to have been an excellent father. That's, I think, most important to me. Really, out of anything else, that's my purpose, I think, is to be a good dad. And I think I've done a good job under the circumstances of my life. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome.
That's it.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.